Hi, Robin with Oxy-Dry, and just finished my last job of the day, and heading home. And I was thinking while I was at my job about a situation that occurred that may be a helpful learning experience for some of you guys, so carpet cleaners, BLM guys. So I thought I'd just ramble on a little bit here while I'm driving along and tell you a little story. And this is a story about carpet cleaning and a problem or a challenge that as carpet cleaners we do come across. And the situation that I'm wanting to just talk about is about dealing with a competitor that would have the potential to interfere with what I was wanting to do and with what we've been doing with Oxy-Dry for the last now 25 years. And how did I address this particular challenge? Might be of interest to some of you. And the story is about a competitor, which is a large franchise out of the U.S., and that would be Oxy-Fresh. And I kind of discovered Oxy-Fresh maybe 5 or 6 years ago on YouTube. I guess all of a sudden I began noticing their videos, which were all about selling franchises. I didn't really know anything about them at the time, way back then, but I began to read comments from other carpet cleaners who'd run into their system and their way of doing things. And so I immediately was struck by the similarity of their name to my name, and I've been around for, we started 25 years ago, so in Oxy-Fresh, I think they started maybe 10 years ago, I'm not quite sure. But anyway, I thought right away, boy, that's a very similar sounding name to Oxy-Dry. And I realized that as a franchise, there was a good chance that they would likely expand into Canada. And I realized that they were pretty slick in how they were doing things, and they had a low moisture process. Of course, they're using CRB, and well, that's another story. But I realized that if somebody ever did buy up a franchise here in my city, there was a good chance that I would lose business to them, even by accident, because we have such a similar sounding name that people might, even though we've been around for, well, 25, almost back then, I was like over 20 years anyway, when this was going on in my mind. But I realized that there was a good chance that I would end up losing some of my customers to them, which actually ended up happening. But anyway, as I thought about the very likely possibility that this big corporation, you can say, this operation would come into Canada, I really took note of that. I took it seriously. And I'm very well aware of Chem-Dry, and Chem-Dry, at least at one time, was the largest carpet cleaning franchise in the world. I don't know if they still are, but at the time when they were, they were pretty much everywhere using their rotary bonnet system, and of course their carbonation and everything. So I realized that obviously a very slick operation, um, franchise with a low moisture process has the potential to really make an impact into the market. So I really took it seriously, and I thought about, okay, what what's the right answer for me? If they are going to come to Kelowna, I need to have a plan. And so the normal reaction to something like that occurring would be that you would expect, well, if they come to town, of course, Oxyfresh only ever advertises with like the Valpaks and coupon kind of a thing. At least that's all I've ever seen. And I'm assuming that that's basically how they have to operate. And it appears that all the pricing that they have is all dictated from head office and whatnot. But regardless, they have $89, sometimes $99 for 3 rooms or whatever. And of course, that's a loss leader marketing uh, thing that they do with the idea of getting in the door at a very low price and then obviously upsell, because you can't make money at $89, and we all know that. Actually, interesting, one of the things that sort of triggered my thinking was that earlier today I did a sectional, a very large sectional, and they had done it 2 years previous. They charged the lady $170, and I just cleaned it for $470. Same piece of furniture. And as I was cleaning it, I was thinking, what a ridiculously low price that they would charge so little for a huge sectional. It took me about almost 2.5 hours to clean this big sectional. I don't know how long it would take them. I'm not even sure how they clean. I assume it's a little portable of some sort. But anyway, the point being is that they're a low ball, high volume, get in the door, upsell model, and the real business that Oxyfresh is in is actually the selling of franchises, and the idea being that you, as a franchise owner, they will sell you on the idea of you're going to get the market, you're going to multiply yourself by having, you'll start really making money when you have 2, 3, or more vans on the road, and then you're going to really make lots of money. But the way to really get the market is to lowball price, so people will get you in the door, you get your volume up, and that's how it's supposed to work. But the problem is that thinking doesn't work anymore, but we'll get back to that, I guess. So as I considered what was likely coming down the pipe, as it were, I thought, okay, I need to have a plan. And you would think that I would simply come up with a plan to counteract them with, okay, if they're going to have a sale price, I'm going to have a sale price, and the usual, let's battle it out on, who's going to win by lowering their price enough, and kind of a deal or whatever. And I thought, I don't like that idea. It's not my style. And what are the things that I have to offer when I come to the table as far as my business, my system, my whole approach to carpet cleaning, which is, in other words, what are the strengths of my business? And the strengths of my business are, well, first of all, I'm the strength of my business, and you guys as owner-operators, and most of you guys who are on this VLM page, which is where I'm primarily directing this, you're in the same kind of a boat, as it were, that I am in, where you're an independent operator. You're not, you don't have a big advertising budget. You don't have, you're not beholden to anybody, and that's good. But on the other hand, it leaves you kind of having to figure all these things out on your own, and that can be a little daunting. You may be a good carpet cleaner, but marketing is tricky. And most guys do tend to make the mistake of kind of following what everybody else does. So anyway, you were going to want to know, what did I do to deal with what I felt was a potential threat to my business? How would I handle it? How did I handle it? Well, I did the exact opposite to what you might think you should do. First of all, when I saw the name Oxy-Fresh, I thought, I like that. That's a good name. I like it. If I thought of it 25 years ago, Oxy-Dry might have been Oxy-Fresh. But I couldn't obviously do that. But I liked the word fresh, so I actually tried to register the name Fresh Carpet Cleaning. I had a plan, but that didn't work out because it wasn't approved. It was not clear enough or something. I don't know what it was. Actually, my initial plan was to have a sort of a separate business under another name. But anyway, I didn't do that. That was plan A. Then I went to plan B. Plan B was to focus again on what Oxy-Dry is, and my whole concept of how to present myself and market myself, and the image that I have been trying to do to portray with Oxy-Dry as not just as a carpet cleaning business, but as a carpet cleaning method, and the whole concept of marketing this business as a full service cleaning business all the time, rather than just here's our latest price deal and then get in the door and upsell, because you have to almost always discount your service in order to have something to upsell from if you're going to discount your price. Anyway, the first thing I did is I came up with the idea. I like the fresh thing, so what I did is I took the fresh and I changed it into a logo. And if you go into my website, oxydry.ca, and you'll see the fresh logo. It'll come up. It's here, there, and everywhere. And the idea of the fresh thing was partly because I wanted to promote Oxy-Dry as a green cleaning system, which it is. But I didn't want to use the word green because everybody uses the word green, and if everybody's using the word green, then using the word green kind of gets lost in the background noise. So I wanted to become Oxy-Dry, the fresh carpet cleaner, and it got a nice little logo with the circly thing and everything, and so that was partly it. And part of the reason I did that, the other reason I did that is because I wanted to preempt Oxy-Fresh coming into my city by being kind of on ahead of them on using the word fresh and associating fresh with Oxy-Dry, rather than them coming in and everybody go, oh, look at that, there's something new, Oxy-Fresh, what's that? But whereas we would have hopefully I'd be out of the gate ahead of them with using the word fresh and associating with carpet cleaning. That was one of the reasons why I did that. The second thing I did is I raised my prices. And one of the reasons I raised my prices is because I wanted to actually slow down a little bit, take a little bit more time, but be able to afford to do that. And I increased or added to the service that we include in our cleaning. It was about that time that I actually came up with the modified vacuum, the Kirby Max Vac with the dirt cup on it, which is a tremendous asset for showing people exactly what you're getting out of the carpet. I mean, it's really a real game changer, that. So I increased the price, I added to the service, I slowed down, and it was about 3 years ago, maybe, I guess it was about 3 years ago. That's when I also hired a helper, partly because I was going to take a little more time with the job, and having the helper there to be doing sort of the more mundane things, which would give me a little more time to interact with my customers. And because the greatest asset that we as owner operators have is ourselves. Nobody cares about your business as much as you do. Nobody's going to put the effort and the energy and the time, the the attention to detail into what you're doing as you are. And these franchises and bigger operations that may be in your city, um, their weakness is their largeness. You can quote me on that one. I like that. I just made that up. Weakness is their largeness. Because the more um, they become kind of a carpet cleaning, becomes kind of like a conveyor belt of carpet cleaning. Whereas if you're an owner operator, you're going to take the time, at least you should be, taking the time and making that effort to go above and beyond in all that you do. And if rather than being concerned about trying to beat that other guy on the price point, you will lose that battle, or at least it won't result in the end result that you really want. Because at the end of the day, you don't care if you do a great big number of a high volume of jobs as much as you care about doing the quality jobs that give you the let's see, what am I trying to say here? It's not about it's not about the volume of jobs you do. It's about the quality of jobs that you get that put the maximum amount of dollars into your pocket for the effort you put out. I think I muttered about this before, or wrote about this before in one of my intros, I think, or one of my comments, where I was talking about taking the time to really increase the value of what you're offering your customer. And that's something that as an owner operator you can do. You can add to your what you're including as far as like deodorizing or sanitizing or protector, and whereas these other operators, when they're after when they're price point marketing, they're counting on getting in the door at a certain price, but adding to that price by upselling. That is their weakness, not their strength. And if you can market yourself as against that as, unlike my competitors, I'm going to include A, B, C, D, and E in my service, and they don't include anything. Well, when that person calls you up and they're holding that guy's coupon in their hand, and this is a funny story, but this happened many times, that my wife would answer the phone and the person would say, "I've got your coupon and I'd like to make an appointment." And of course they didn't have our coupon. They had an Oxy-Fresh coupon. And I can't tell you how many times she said that this happened. And I don't know why well, I guess I know why they would phone us, because they had they'd look for our local number rather than calling their 1-800 number, which is, yeah. Of course, they actually answered their phone in Denver, apparently. But anyway, so even though they would phone and they'd have a coupon for, say, $89 in their hand, and my wife would say, "Oh, well, we're not Oxy-Fresh, we're Oxy-Dry." And of course, people would often be surprised. And actually, interestingly enough, the job I did this morning, where I did the section I mentioned earlier, that lady actually thought she was getting Oxy-Fresh back when I walked in the door, and she said, "Oh, you were here before," and I said, "Oh no, it wasn't me." And then I had to explain to her the differences and everything. So people call up, and they thought that they were calling Oxy-Fresh, but my wife immediately corrected them. Said, "You're talking to Oxy-Dry." And then she'd say to them, "Let me tell you the differences," and she would explain what are the differences in both our methodology and then how our pricing works and what we include. And so even though they would be holding a coupon there for $89, in almost every case, my wife would book the job, which for an $89 three-room whatever it was, which is their, I guess that's their lowest price they advertise. For us, that would typically be a job of $250 or $300, and in almost every case, she would book it. Why? Are people just looking for price? No, they're not. They actually aren't. They just don't know what else to ask. So don't be intimidated by these big operations that are around you or come into your area or whatever, because you are your greatest asset, and you can react and adapt to the market much faster than these franchises can, because they're beholden to the head office. And interestingly enough, what occurred is a couple of years after this um, realization had come upon me, and I started making these changes, they did arrive in my town. One day, I went to do a customer of mine, and I walked in the door, and I'm looking at a carpet, and I thought, "Oh my goodness, what's happened to your carpet? It looked terrible." And she said, "Oh, well, I had somebody else come in and clean it last time because you weren't available." And I couldn't believe it. I was looking at her carpet. It looked massacred. And I said, "Well, who was it?" And they couldn't remember, interestingly enough. I wasn't sure what had happened to the carpet. They couldn't remember who it was. And it wasn't until I moved the couch that I realized the pattern of the CRB machine was all over underneath where the couch was. And I realized that a CRB machine had been used on the carpet. At that point, I still didn't realize it was Oxy-Fresh, but probably about a week or two later, I was driving down the road and I saw the vehicle pass me going the other direction. I went, "Oh, Oxy-Fresh is in town after all now." And I quickly looked them up, and what do you know? They'd been in town for almost 6 months or more, I guess. I just hadn't realized they were around, oddly enough. Usually I notice those things, but and then over the next couple of years, I have seen at least half a dozen or more than half a dozen carpets that have got significant tip bloom damage from Oxy-Fresh and their CRB machines on the carpet. Anyway, when I realized that they were in town, and then I quickly, I guess that's when I went back opening up the bell packs, because I hadn't cared about that before. And then every 3 months, I guess it was, there they were again. Every 3 months they'd be in there again, again, again. And I said to my wife, "I give them 3 years maximum, and they will be done. They'll be out of here." And it was interesting because, as I mentioned, it wasn't uncommon for my wife to get Oxy-Fresh. People calling what they thought was Oxy-Fresh. They had the coupon in their hand, and almost every case she would then book the job, even though we were going to give them a quote that was 2 to 3 times more than what the coupon they had in their hand for Oxy-Fresh was. But anyway, I guess it was about the 2-year mark, and all of a sudden, Oxy-Fresh was on the local internet uh, community page for sale. And they tried to sell for, I believe it was around 90,000 or so. And I knew that they weren't going to do well here, and I knew that the plan they had wasn't going to come through. I know the idea being that they would have been sold the idea that they would be they would be able to dominate the market, and they would have two vans, two vans on the road within a year or two, and three within another year or whatever. They were going to just take over, and everything was going to be hunky-dory, and they'd make lots of money. Didn't happen, because it doesn't work anymore. This whole program of the coupon and here's the deal you can't refuse, this isn't working anymore for anybody. So they did try to sell for, I guess, about a year. They did drop the price. It was interesting because one of the things they had in their write-up about their business, they're kind of trying to, tell people what, here's what we've been around for 2 years or 3 years or whatever, and it's a business with all kinds of potential and everything. And it's interesting because they had put an average. They'd said, no, not an average. They had put on there that the biggest month in 2017 or 2018, I can't remember which year it was, they said was $17,000. And I thought, well, that's interesting, because that tells me an awful lot, because that's way lower than my average month. There's just not enough money to be made, even though they don't have an overhead like a truck mount would. They have got other expenses, and as a franchise, of course, they're paying franchise fees as well. And of course, the way their system works is because the phone goes through to a head office. They're in Denver, their head office or whatever. They pay for every phone call, and the product they buy, they have to buy it from Oxy-Fresh. And anyway, it's just not a good setup. And I'd be willing to bet anything that almost anybody who buys a carpet cleaning franchise has either never owned a business before, or certainly never owned a carpet cleaning business before, because there are very few carpet cleaners who would ever buy a franchise, because we know there's just not enough money to give to somebody else for doing nothing for you, because that's what they basically do. You're not gaining anything, actually, but by going with a franchise. So you guys that are independent operators, and I guess pretty much everybody else, everybody on this VLM page is low moisture carpet cleaners Facebook page. That's who I'm addressing this to primarily. The answer to how to deal with competitors is up your game. Include more. Do the better job, and you'll get the referrals, you'll get the repeats, you'll get the 5-star reviews. Just be patient. It'll just keep coming and coming your way, and don't be scared by that Valpak deal that you can't refuse that comes. In fact, remember that the more jobs these guys do at those low ball prices, the better, because as long as they're doing that, what I would call the bottom feeder market, they're wasting their time and their money going after these low ball jobs, and they're not gaining anything. They aren't. So, one other thing I made sure I did is my minimum. I think we put up our minimum as well a little bit. Our minimum is actually 160, and that may sound like a lot, but think about your time there, your time back, your time on the job. You can't give away your time. You just can't. We can't afford to do that. And you if you give away your time, you're taking that money out of your own pocket. You can't do that anymore. We just can't afford to do that. So, and prices that, think about it. The pricing, like $89 for 3 rooms, that was 20 years ago. That was 30 years ago. Really? That long ago, these prices were. So, anyway, that was my story about how to deal with a potentially difficult, challenging competitor. I think that we did definitely take a lot of business away from them, for sure. And I've actually been doing a lot more previous Oxy-Fresh customers in the last little while because they were still operating up until just a few months ago, and but now I think just before Christmas, I believe they kind of basically finally packed it in. You can't, and of course with the situation that's going on right now with everybody, this would have been this would have destroyed them anyway. There's just not enough to play with money-wise when you're this low ball of price and you're counting on high volume. So I mean, I can go out and work half the volume that I normally would be doing, and I'm still doing okay because I've been charging amount of money that I can. I got enough leeway in here. We've learned to do this. That it's not about a cheap price. It's about just being better, including more. I mean, the lady I just cleaned for her just did an empty condo. Um, I think we just had an interesting talk. I've been cleaning her carpets for like way more than 10 years, and she just loves every time that I get there and do the job. She has no problem paying. I charged her around $300 for what I did there for her, and she's just thrilled because she knows that she's getting her money's worth. And she's a great customer. She's actually written, I think, 2 reviews for us over the years. It's kind of funny. Her daughter was there and talking about how I have got so many customers there. I've literally seen their kids grow up and go out on their own and whatnot. So that's how old I am. Anyway, I hope that'll give you something to ponder on no, just I guess the message here is don't be intimidated by those coupons that come in the mail. That's not your game. If you really wanted to be a real professional carpet cleaner, be better than those other guys, but charge what's fair for you to make a living at it, and don't be afraid or don't be ashamed of charging what you need to make a living. That's what determines your pricing. It's not what the other guy's doing. It's what you're doing that determines the price. Okay? So there, I talk too much, right?